Kyle Neddenriep, man. What are we in? Week 16 of high school football now?
Yeah, week 5. It's mid-season basically. So I'll kind of do a mid-season report next week and start getting into that fun stuff. And yeah, we're cruising right along here.
It is mind-boggling, truly, that they're halfway through their season already.
Yeah, I mean, you start to kind of look ahead even to sectional at this point, or maybe a couple weeks from now, but we're not too far away from selection show and starting to look at what the pairings are going to be.
Anything at this stage that is just surprising? There, wow, I did not expect that by this time, because at this time of the year, you can tell who's who.
Yeah, I mean, not like that'll just like blow you away necessarily. I mean, some of the better programs are, still, the kind of the nature of football in a lot of ways is that it's hard to knock those teams off that are kind of the premier programs year in and year out. I would say kind of the thought that we had going into the year that maybe Cathedral was potentially the best team. I don't think that's really played out to be the case. I would say, and I've been ranking Center Grove number 1 in 6A still, even though they lost to Trinity in that double overtime game. Basically it came down to a 2-point conversion they didn't get. So, in my estimation, they shouldn't be knocked too much for that. So I've kept them at number 1, but I would say Brownsburg has probably been the most consistently strong, and they are ranked number 1 right now. But I think you kind of go down the list in 6A, and Cathedral is they're ranked number 3. Brownsburg beat them. HSE, which I saw them play Friday night against Fishers, and just a fantastic game and atmosphere. 8,000 people there, and just an awesome game. And I thought I came away impressed with both those teams. Fishers actually moved up into the top 10 after losing, so that kind of shows you what people thought about that game. And Fishers, I thought probably really should, in a lot of ways, probably should have won that game. But anyway, I think that just shows you. And then you have, Carmel's ranked 5th, and they're very good. Westfield is probably not where they were the last 2 years, but still very dangerous. Ben Davis, I think at 2-2 is the best 2-2 team in the state. Their only losses are to Brownsburg and Center Grove by a combined 6 points. So all that power in 6A is all concentrated in Central Indiana. And I know, there's other teams getting, Carroll out of Fort Wayne is up to number 7 this week, but you go down the list and it's just like all Central Indiana. And I honestly, it's probably rightly so. I think there's even some more outside the top 10 from our area that probably are deserving of mention. But yeah, so to me, that's kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of a wide open, anybody can play with anybody on a given, not anybody, but a lot of teams can play with each other on a given night, and you're not going to know the result. Brownsburg Fishers this week will be a really good game. I would say, so from that standpoint, maybe that's somewhat of a surprise. I don't know if, that's kind of a little different than what we've had the last few years with Center Grove being so dominant. But, not a lot of huge, major surprises in our area necessarily. And, Edinburgh being 4-0 for the first time since 1961 is kind of a cool story. This program that's really struggled for many years in football, good in other sports, but not in football. So I think that's always cool to see programs have success that don't have success very often. So some of those small school stories are, North Decatur has not allowed a single point this season, which I think is kind of cool and very unusual in this day and age of offense. So I don't know. I mean, there's some good stories out there for sure.
There's looking at it's a former piece in the Star of where are Indiana players now, and I was just trying to look down through that specifically at O lineman. It didn't really. There's Indiana's got one. There's one from Cathedral that's at Alabama. But that shows you though, Cathedral. They had a kid that played on the line in the national championship game against Ohio State with other daggone it. What was his name that played basketball? 6'9" kid.
Oh, DeJuan Jones.
Yeah. DeJuan Jones played again when DeJuan Jones and Ohio State played Clemson. There was a kid on the Clemson line from Cathedral, I believe, right?
Well, Alabama has Emil Ekiyor who plays.
Right.
He's the their stud lineman. His dad, I got to know their family. He was originally committed to Michigan, then opened things back up, committed to Alabama, and yeah, he's probably going to be drafted. I watch. I'm not necessarily an Alabama fan, but I like watching him play, and they were obviously here for the national championship game last year. But yeah, he's really good.
That had to be cool for him getting to play in Lucas Oil for the national championship.
Yeah, definitely, and a good, cool family. They're definitely appreciative. His dad had played a little bit with the Colts back in the I don't even remember what year that was necessarily, but he's got a little bit of a football background as well. Good, nice guy. So yeah, it's cool to see him have that opportunity, and he was a guy he was a basketball player too, growing up, good athlete. Sometimes those linemen, you can tell, if they played soccer or basketball or other sports just by their footwork, and I think that certainly helped him. But yeah, just a really good player, obviously starting at Alabama for a reason.
Midway through the year now, Mr. Football has out that race. Is it still as open as it has been? Is it tightened up any?
Yeah, I'm going to take a closer look at that here in a couple of weeks. I would say there's a young man named Luke Hanson at Roncalli who's, 4 games into the year, he's already over 1,000 yards rushing, and that has something to do with the line that he has. Trevor Lauk, who is going to Iowa, to play offensive line, is a major reason for that. But they have several good linemen up front. And Hanson's a really good running back. So I'm not saying he's a front runner, but I think he's putting his name into the conversation at least. I really, Drake Bowen from Andrean, who's going to Notre Dame, I think is probably the guy you would look at and say that's probably the front runner. He was Gatorade Player of the Year last year. They won the state championship. So I don't have his numbers that right in front of me, but I know he's probably the guy. This was kind of a year where you didn't really have a lot of quarterbacks that were obvious candidates, I would say, as seniors going into the season. So, where you had Brady Allen last year, who was pretty clearly, everything we thought he would be now at Purdue, he won a state championship. So some of that stuff will have to play out and see who wins in the tournament and that sort of thing. But, you look up and down in 6A, and there's really not a ton of guys that you would say, that's a surefire Mr. Football candidate. So I would say Bowen. And then if you look at Roncalli's team with Luke Hanson, who, he's on, and they play a really good schedule, even though they're 4A, they play a lot of bigger schools, and they play really good 4A teams too. And he's, to be 1,000 yards in 4 games is sort of ridiculous. So, I would put his name in there as well.
Reminds me of me back in my days.
Of course.
Yeah, of course I was driving a car. I'm just kidding. Is the season gone as you expected? It seems to be kind of quiet, nothing out of the ordinary, and usually we have something that jumps up, but it's been just a quiet and quick season, it seems like.
Maybe for you, I don't know. It seems pretty busy to me.
that's because I'm not covering it. I'm covering other stuff.
I was gonna say it's been there hadn't been like some fight or any it hadn't been stuff like that has happened, which is good. But yeah, I mean it's been busy in my estimation. But I would say for the most part it's gone smoothly, I hope. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff at IndyStar.com, probably more than we ever have. So we're covering it a lot. I wrote a story today on Colts players who are, have kids playing. Eugene Hilton. I talked to T.Y. Hilton last week. And
that's very cool.
Yeah, I wrote a story about kind of combining. I didn't just want to write one story on Eugene Hilton, but he's a sophomore receiver at Zionsville that is very, very good and fun to see him start to, be a major player on Friday night. They have two good receivers. He's definitely one of them, and only
What's
a
their
sophomore.
quarterback's name? They have a good quarterback too.
Yeah, Christian Abney is their quarterback, and he's going to Ball State for college. So yeah, he's a good player too. So they got and then Cole Ballard, who is Chris Ballard's son, the general manager of the Colts. He's quarterback at Westfield. I don't know if you remember the name Justin Snow was the long snapper for the Colts for many years. His son Hunter is starting safety at Carmel. Hunter Smith, who was the punter for the Colts in the heyday there with the Manning era, his son Josiah is a kicker for Western Boone and actually kicked a game-winning field goal 2 years ago in the state championship game. So talked to all four of those guys and just wrote a combined, hey, because you hear a lot about, hey, the Colts are, the reason the high school football is so popular and productive here in Central Indiana is majorly because the Colts have been popular, and especially during that Manning era. But now you're seeing some of those Manning era sons, playing on Friday night. So people want to check that out. I finished that yesterday, and it's online as of this morning, and looks like a lot of people are reading it, so that's good. But yeah, so that that's kind of a at least in our area, I think a cool thing is you have some of the intangible effect of the Colts, but also the tangible, where you see some of those names of players, and it's kind of cool to see that.
Yeah, I was looking for the story. I couldn't find it because it was right on top, right in front of me, Kyle. Number listed. I was like, jumped right over the very first one. It's the very daggone first story. Yeah, make sure you check that out. That is very cool, man. That's a very unique kind of a deal. And you don't think about how lucky some of these high school teams are to get this talent. You look at Indiana right now. You've got Dason McCullough, who the reason he's here is because his dad came here last year as a coach, and he played at Bloomington South, committed to Indiana. Of course, his dad is now at Notre Dame. Dason is still here. Of course, Dason's 2-0, baby, and his dad is 0-2 right now up at Notre Dame. So he may have made the right choice, and he's playing a lot as a freshman. So there's someone that we saw as a freshman. You don't see that very often, Kyle. A freshman going into Division I, P5, and playing as much as he is. You got to be pretty talented.
Yeah, you do. Normally, you may see a receiver or, maybe,
speed.
Sometimes
if you got speed, something speed. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's hard at that level to step in right away. And I know normally when you look at teams that are kind of going through growing pains, I mean, some of those opportunities may be there to present themselves, and it's kind of up to you to jump on it and make it work. And he certainly is. And, so that's cool to see. But yeah, I mean, that's a good example of, if Eugene Hilton, if T.Y. didn't play for the Colts, Eugene Hilton would probably be playing in Florida somewhere, and we would have never had him up here. And so that's kind of the situation. Or Cole Ballard, he was living in Kansas City. His dad was the Chiefs director of operations. They come here when he's in 7th grade, and now he's, he loves it here, loves playing at Westfield, and it's worked out really well for him. But yeah, Carmel's the school. They've really, over the years, they've had several Colts connections, coaches' kids, play for them. They've kind of been the school that's really, benefited from that mostly. But now we're starting to see, some of a lot of the north side suburbs is where those players live or coaches live. So, those are the schools that mostly have ended up with them. But I think we'll see more of that in the future. That'll be cool to see in the future, like what happens, if we see more of that happen.